Holly Ann, thank you so much for being on the Authors on Audio podcast. We're here to talk about your book, In the Midnight Garden, which I had so much fun reading. It gave me almost like Crimson Peak, Phantom of the Opera vibes.
That's 100% what I was going for. I'm happy to be here and talking about In the Midnight Garden.
So the first question I like to ask all my guests is, how did you get into writing?
I was always a book nerd growing up, so I always had this idea of making up stories, especially on the playground with my friends in terms of these world expansive ideas and storylines. It wasn't until I was 13 when I started participating in NaNoWriMo that I actually started writing. I wrote a really terrible book that's still up on Wattpad to this day, but it taught me a lot in terms of what kind of goes into writing per se. It wasn't until much later after college where I just sat down and I was just okay, this is my last attempt to write something, to see if I could write a novel, and here we are.
So is In the Midnight Garden your first novel that you wrote as an adult?
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
My first novel that I wrote was it's actually called R is for Murder, and that one's more or less my challenge to myself on writing a novel without romance in it. It's a paranormal horror book that is near and dear to me when I was going through a lot of stuff. In the Midnight Garden, it's completely opposite. It's the second book I wrote right after that. Completely opposite, which is okay, let's have fun and see how much all these ideas that have been percolating, how can I put them into a book?
So how do you feel like your writing evolved between, R is for Murder and In the Midnight Garden?
Definitely a lot more poetry-esque, a lot of gothic-esque. R is for Murder was very much a contemporary horror, the set in the real world, unhinged, versus In the Midnight Garden where it had a lot of gothic influences. So it's two completely different ideas, and I had a lot more fun with In the Midnight Garden in terms of the gothic imagery, the poetry way of how things are, or the imagery I should say, how all of that kind of fits together.
So what obviously In the Midnight Garden it's Beauty and the Beast retelling of sorts. What were some of the other inspirations behind that?
Definitely the biggest influence was this is specific, the 1992 version of Bram Stoker's Dracula with Winona Ryder and Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves, because I sat there and I was just bro, Mina and Dracula have more chemistry than Mina and Jonathan. Why aren't they together? I also read the original Dracula novel, so I know there's no romance element component to it. But that movie, literally, I've watched it on replay so many times that I was just okay, I need a book specifically with these two types of characters. And then I was watching a lot of gothic horror movies and reading a lot of gothic horror stuff. Crimson Peak is definitely a huge one. I love that film to this day.
So
it's
good.
One of my favorite. I'm going to butcher it, and I am sorry. Guillermo del Toro, one of my most favorite. Nosferatu came out around the time that I was finishing. Actually, no. I finished the novel in February of 2024. Actually, Nosferatu came out in December of 2024 when I was doing a lot of editing. So that one definitely left a lasting impression in terms of the final work for it. There was a lot of gothic literature that I was consuming during that time, and I can't think of any of them off the top of my head. A lot of vampire books, I was reading a vampire book by a buddy of mine called Hollow, by Amanda Sinatra, and I was just I was in a vampire festive mood. Let's just put it that way.
So take me through your writing process then. So you're consuming all of this delicious gothic media. What does it look like when you take all that and you sit down to write? Are you you need a big plot outline lined up for you, or you just sit down and write and see where it goes? What does that look like for you?
So I have refined this process over the course of a couple of books, but
Sure.
generally I get this brainstorming document. I put everything that I'm seeing that I really want to have in the book, whether I mix it in the book or not. completely is up to like what I feel like in the editing stage. So basically like huge scenes that stick out to me, maybe some like character dynamics or character traits that stick out to me, and then I go into the actual outline, and it's not really much of this is happening per beat, but like here is like the first chapter, and I don't really label my chapters because maybe they'll move around or something like that during the writing process, but I'll put a couple bullet points of, okay, this is what I want to happen in this book. Generally, I'm very good about how I want to end my chapters, so that helps me figure out where I want to take the story. And then for the characters and stuff, basically I do like an entire character sheet where I figure out who they are as a person. I have a social work background, so it's like kind of like my favorite thing where I'm like, okay, what trauma can I give my characters in terms of what fits for this particular story. So essentially it's doing a character sheet like that, doing a brief outline, and then I go into the actual writing process where I do the first draft. Generally I'm very good about sticking to the outline, and if things are going great, cool, I don't have to change anything, or maybe I think of something during it and I like make a note during my process of like, hey, make sure you tie up this little thing, you added it here but it needs to be up here, a little hodgepodge during the first draft, and then after that I just let it sit, and then we go into editing.
What does editing look like for you? Do you just go in and, just read, see how it all flows? Is there a deeper process there?
So I normally read the first draft and make comments to myself of like, okay, I really like this, or oof, nope, change. And then I go back in and I do the first like overall like first changes. Generally, I end up with a shorter word count, so like by the end of my drafts and the final end product, it's a lot longer. Like in the Midnight Garden, when I finished it with K, when it was completely published, I believe it got knocked up to 85. So I leave comments and then I go in and add anything. Maybe there was a few scenes that I really wanted to add, or something didn't make any sense here, those little notes, and then I chuck it off to a beta reader. For In the Midnight Garden, I actually had my best friend, and I also had someone I did reach out to for services, and then I had my mom. So it was a very small process. My friends' comments were very unhinged, and I adored that. But during that entire process, I wasn't really like thinking I'm going to publish In the Midnight Garden, because at the time I was agented, so I was just like, okay, we'll see what happens. And then as soon as I got serious in terms of wanting to publish it, I went with an actual professional. Shout out to the Gothic editor for doing that entire process. But she went through and did the copy line, all of that stuff edits. But between my edits, my beta reader edits, I do another edit in between to see what they caught, what they didn't. Maybe something made sense, maybe something didn't make sense, or that felt like something needed to be added. And then do another read through. Maybe I give it back to a beta reader to see if it fits with what they were thinking, if it made more sense. And then I also give it to somebody else who's never read the story to see if it meshes a lot better before I give it to that final person.
Now, I couldn't quite figure it out online. Is In the Midnight Garden independently published, or I saw that you do have an agent, correct?
Yes, so it's independently published. I had originally queried Ours for Murder with an agent that got me my agent, Angie from Lunar Literary Agency, but it was independently published because I sat down and I was just like, okay, I could either wait for something to happen because the book world moves very slow and I'm impatient, or I could say screw it and publish it myself. So I went for it and I published it myself. I had a lot of great friends along the way that were giving me tips and tricks on certain things to do, certain things not to do. Marketing is still the one thing I loathe to death and absolutely hate, but must do. I'm sure every single author is the same way.
Every single one. Everyone I have interviewed has said it's just the bane of their existence, having to market the book.
It truly is, especially in the landscape that we find ourselves with social media and changing algorithms. But yeah, I independently published, and I'm just waiting for some cool deals like my other buddies have for audio and all that stuff. But I am looking to hopefully have a hybrid career at some point.
Very cool. That's so interesting because I still, the more people I talk to, the more I'm just kind of learning about the differences between indie versus traditional publishing. And I'm only just learning that hybrid is like a thing. I was under the impression you either go indie or you go traditional. And
Yeah, I think in the book world, it's just becoming a lot more socially acceptable to be a hybrid versus just one or the other, just because of how popular self-publishing has become and how traditional publishers have recognized how they can really sink into that market. So I wouldn't be surprised if hybrid publishing becomes like a huge thing here in the next few years, if it isn't already.
when it comes to just your writing process, like starting to write the book through publishing the book, what is your favorite thing about that process? And what is the thing that you hate the most? You said marketing already. Is there anything else that is just like you just have to do it because it's part of the process?
I would have to say a lot of the creative decisions of getting the book together, like your formatting services, the book cover services, all that stuff. I like the pretty things, so I'm a very indecisive girly. So, like, if you put something in front of me and tell me, oh my God, what vision do you have for this book? And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I mean, I know I wrote the thing, but like, here are like kind of the things I'm looking for. Here's an example, but go ham. I love artists. I love them all. Like, I love the art that they create. So it's kind of hard for me to put them in the box of like, hey, I need this book cover or I need this like particular formatted way. And I have to be very specific. I'm not a very specific person. But in terms of like other things that I really, really like during the creative process, it's basically being unhinged as possible without having to have the microscope on me in terms of how do I reel that back yet. Like, first drafts are completely unhinged, like, absolutely to the wall, kind of unhinged. But as I go through the editing process, I kind of reel that back in. But like, it's so nice to have a first draft where it's like, I know for a fact no one's gonna ever see this like draft ever. Maybe a few beta readers, but those are like close trusted people that know that I'm unhinged. Before going into any kind of processes where there's going to be a lot more eyes on it.
Do you think you would ever release a book and just leave it in its unhinged phase instead of reeling it in a little bit?
I'm actually working on one right now, and it's the bane of my existence because of how hard this book is. It's not following any part of this process. So like that very nice detailed process I just laid out earlier, no, it went out the window as soon as I started writing it. Like, I outlined this book 3 times. One of those times I had to re-outline in the middle of drafting it. So it's probably going to stay unhinged because I don't think there's a way I could reel back anything in terms of just this monstrosity of a book.
I love those books. I like an unhinged book. Like, that's definitely more my flavor when I read. I didn't think In the Midnight Garden was crazy unhinged, but that could just be a reflection of my taste versus the book itself. But I thought it was very beautiful, actually. So speaking of, let's get into some of the book-specific questions I had for you. What was the inception of the book? What was the moment where you were like, oh, I'm going to write this? What did that look like?
So, I was in Bullock. So I'm an Army officer on the side. So, like, I remember specifically, I was in the middle of class, and I was just like, that one movie, the Bram Stoker Dracula movie, and I watched the previous night, like, for the upteenth millionth time. What if Dracula and Mina got together? What would that look like? So, like, I had, like, kind of a premise of what I wanted it to be. I knew that the main character was going to be sick and dying. The other main character was going to be, like, immortal. There was going to be this castle and, like, kind of like a curse. During this draft, I had completely different names during that little, like, spotlighting moment. But I was just, like, playing with the idea of what if the only way that the curse could be broken, what if it's like this whole like mystery sort of thing. And a lot of inspiration also, because I was rereading Cruel Beauty at the same time, and I really love like the play on like the Greek mythology, with that Beauty and the Beast retelling. I really loved that entire thing. I found it gorgeous in its like atmosphere, and I was just like, what if like something like that but with vampires? what if that became a thing?
In the original Beauty and the Beast, she just has to fall in love with him and the curse is broken. In your retelling, she has to remember his name and the curse is broken. How'd you come up with that little plot point?
Um, I would have to say it was also kind of inspired by Cruel Beauty too, because that was like one of the things in that book I remember specifically and vividly. Because I absolutely hated the end. Like it was a gorgeous book. The end, it was just very. It didn't leave me feeling cathartic about it. So I was just like, okay. So obviously I was taking those two ideas, and it was just like, I mean, it hasn't. I mean, it has been done before, but it hasn't been done before. So. But then I also like really wanted like the little clues to be very obvious, like in terms of like the letters and stuff of how you can actually get to finding out the name.
It almost reads a little bit like a mystery in that regard. I wonder, because your first book, it sounds like it was a mystery, the R is for Murder one?
Yes,
Or
it
not
was
so much?
it's kind of a mystery. You try to figure out what exactly is going on in terms of the bigger picture at play of who is murdering all of the co-eds in this small town. Whether or not it's supernatural is really up for debate, especially because the main character is very much heavy into the supernatural. Her mother was a witch, versus the detective investigating this case who does not believe in supernatural. So a lot of that kind of component kind of came into play when I was crafting in the Midnight Garden, because I was just like, I think it'd be really cool to have not only like a romance, but also like a mystery embedded in it in terms of like how Silas got there in terms of the castle, the ghosts, and just exactly what happened.
And that's why I was asking, because of course in the Midnight Garden reads, it's very much a romance, kind of that paranormal, fantastical feel to it, but there were almost these sort of grounded mystery elements with the letters, like trying to piece together and trying to remember, like, okay, what did the last letter say? How does that tie to our two main characters? So yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It was fun to read and to piece together in that way. Well, let's talk about Valeria's mom, because she is the worst. So she is very cruel to Valeria, oddly, like sort of protective toward Miriam, right? She wants to shield Miriam from some of these terrible fates that she's like totally cool with just throwing Valeria in front of. Can you talk to me about her psychology, what's going on there, why the difference between the two sisters?
So it's very much like older sister syndrome, where you have to be the one to like do everything to protect your family. My thought process behind like Valeria and Miriam's mother was just like, okay, you have a daughter that's dying and is basically sucking up what's left of the family wealth, and you have another one that could possibly get married off to someone who could save the family, but you also have to like hide scandal and all that stuff. What would like someone who's on the edge potentially do to try and keep up the facade? A lot of like the inspiration for Valeria and Miriam's mother actually came from Rose and her mother from the Titanic, with more of a twist, because like if you are Valeria and Miriam's mother basically knew that Valeria is not going to survive the year, and very much looks like her dad. There might have been like a resentment because of the fact that Miriam's mom and Valeria's mom is basically stuck at this crossroad point of, I either have to try and conceal it as long as possible, even if it means marrying off one of my daughters before like this comes to light. It's kind of like a rock and a hard place for them.
So it sounds like, if I'm understanding you correctly, that her thought process is sort of that Valeria is sick anyway, and she's already, so she's just the daughter that kind of gets the short end of the stick, because one of them's got to go, and Valeria's already sick, so it might as well be her.
Yeah, and it's like a quick fire solution. Obviously, they needed the money like right then and there. It could take years to court. So the fact that she was able to find Valeria a match that would overlook this little predicament, potentially was her main motivator for sacrificing Valeria, quote unquote, to be able to save the family's reputation.
It was very messed up, which I think was intentional, but as a reader, you know, you just feel that like that rage over it, especially considering William is like awful. Like If we're talking Beauty and the Beast, I would rather be with Gaston than William
Yeah.
any day, because he was just a sadist, really.
Believe it or not, he was actually supposed to be 10 times worse in the original drafts than the draft that you guys got.
How does it get worse? He was already so terrible. I'm like trying to imagine it.
Just, oh. Abs. Basically, behind the closed door domestic violence sort of thing. And then I cut it because I was just like, maybe that's going a little too far. He's already terrible enough. I don't need that bad.
No, he was definitely terrible enough. Like, you got your point across 100%, because I thought he was just the absolute worst. Okay, let's talk about Silas and Valeria a little bit, because we love them. I'm sure they're near and dear to your heart. Can you explore, Valeria is initially very skeptical of Silas, but he also seems somewhat skeptical of her at first. Why is that? Because he's the one who brought her to the castle, and he's the one who saved her from her terrible marriage. So why does he have that wall kind of built up initially?
I mean, when you've been alone for 1,000 years, not 1,000 years, excuse me, a couple hundred years, give or take, you kind of go stir crazy and you don't really know how to interact with people very much. But even then, it was the fact that seeing the face of his dead lover probably threw him for a loop, and he probably wasn't sure this was a reincarnation of his dead lover or not. So he's very wary because there's a lot of factors in play. Like, is she in fact the reincarnation version of his dead lover, or is it just uncanny valley sort of thing? He's obviously trying to figure that out in terms of just what it is that brought this woman to him, because at the same time, like, his entire castle, it's crumbling around him. It's basically coming to a breaking point, and this woman just happened to he just happens upon this woman just strolling through the streets of Endover just to come face to face with her. Skeptical, but also kind of hopeful.
Do you think there's a part of him that thinks, like, maybe it's a cruel joke of sorts? Maybe, like, I don't know, fate is working against him somehow?
Most definitely. That is kind of also what I was going for, because, like, what are the odds that as everything's falling apart around you, this one thing that's been haunting you since, like, the day you became cursed, and you can't remember the day you became cursed, besides this woman's face, who's also haunting your halls that you don't particularly remember, but remember now? This is kind of a sick joke, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And you definitely get that. I think the push and pull worked as a reader, because I just shipped them so much. It did, it's funny that you bring up the Dracula thing, because now I can see the parallels now that you've mentioned it with, he just like sees her face and the world stops a little bit.
Definitely inspired by the see me now moment.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about Valeria then, because she's very quick to believe Isla when Isla is just telling her, no, for sure it's this guy, he's the reason for all the dead villagers and the dead children. She's very quick to just jump in and believe it, even though you get the sense that her gut is telling her that something's off here. Why is she so quick to believe that?
I think it's just because she did just see this man rip the throat out of the priest. It's more or less because she saw that, it's imprinted on her brain that even though he's nice to me and he, like, saved me, quote unquote, I can't trust him because he could kill me within, like, a split second. Versus this woman who obviously has, like, lived underneath this reign of this random castle, probably has seen this monstrous creature more than once, and seems like more like a trustworthy person than the person that also broke his or her quote-unquote fiance's hand or arm.
It's interesting to me, and I wonder if I was just reading it through, like, my dark romantasy girl glasses, because reading it, I was almost frustrated with her, because I was like, is being nice to you, like, you're in this castle, you sort of gloss over that, okay, he did kill this priest, he did break this guy's arm, even though this guy is objectively horrible. Why are you looking for the escape hatch when you have, like, this gorgeous, nice man bringing you to a castle? It's something I have a hard time wrapping my mind around, I think, as a fly on the wall reading these books, but when you put yourself in the shoes of the actual heroine, like, no, it kind of the skepticism kind of makes sense after all.
And it's also like that edge of thought that you would have if you are like, okay, this guy could completely like kill me within a split second, could completely drain me dry without me even moving a muscle.
I mean, you are essentially being housed with a predator of sorts, which is pretty, even if it's a nice, if I'm in the room with a nice bear, I might still be skeptical of the bear, even if he's not giving me reason not to trust him. It makes sense. So what is your favorite thing as the writer about Silas and Valeria's relationship?
I very much like their push and pull dynamic. So they're quite similar to each other, but also completely opposite to each other, which also makes it like very much of, hey, I saved you, you should be grateful sort of thing. But they're also mutually deeply like attracted to each other and are denying themselves that.
There's definitely a really good push and pull going on. You said that they're similar and also opposite in certain ways. Can you expand on that a little bit? How are they similar? How are they opposite?
So definitely before Silas's in his previous life, he was doing a lot of his stuff for his country. So he put his country and his duties first before himself. Even when he tried to do that, it kind of backfired on him. I mean, it didn't kind of backfire on him. It backfired on him and ended up getting his lover killed. It's great. We love that. And then Valerie is similar in that respects too, because she tends to put her, even though she's like on limited time, even after limited time, she feels some kind of compulsion to help others before she can help herself, even though she knows for a fact that there are more things at play. She would rather like help those that are not able to help, or not able to get help, or able to save themselves per se. Kind of like a sacrificial lamb of sorts. So they're both kind of like this, they don't put themselves first. So in the moment when they do, they almost feel guilty in doing that, but not really. In terms of like, obviously they do at the end, but it's something like that in terms of how they're similar.
Do you think they view, like, giving in to each other, allowing themselves to fall in love with each other, however you want to put it, do you think they view that as putting themselves first, so maybe there's that element of guilt there with, allowing their relationship to progress?
Yeah, definitely for Valeria's side of things, because obviously she's deeply attracted to the potential monster that's been roaming around this village, and Silas to a point, but I think after the events of Silas's previous life, he has kind of sidelined that, and he accepts that he has to go after things before like it's the final end for him. Which is why he's so desperate to like bring Valeria into this haunted castle and just try to break whatever curse is holding him.
So I want to shift gears and make sure we talk about your villains a little bit before move on to talk about the business of writing. Something I kind of observed between William and Narcissa. Something I noticed about them when it came to the motivations for their crimes, it was not so much that they wanted something for themselves. They did want something for themselves, but they were also like angry that another person had what they wanted. It was almost the fact that somebody else had what they wanted that set them on edge. Can you talk to me about both their motivations a little bit and what your thought process was with that?
I'll talk more on Narcissa before I talk on William, because William, it was a whole different ball game with him. But Narcissa, it was more or less that she wanted power, and the fact that this one man had the power that she wanted, even though she was going to get rid of him, she had that concept of idealism and that power to be able to take what she wants when she wanted it, and to not have like another person lord over her. She came from a different country of sort, and she was supposed to be in this in this arranged marriage with Silas at that point in time, but obviously that got dropped due to another alliance that needed to happen between him and him and Endover. She felt as if that power was kind of taken from her, that idea that one final step to where she didn't have to have her entire life decided for her, she can make those political moves, and obviously she did make those political moves. She just didn't like the idea of having someone else take that power away from her, because what she wanted was just power in general. And Silas at that point in time represented that, and the fact that it was taken away by the same man. She was very vindictive, pretty much, in terms of, you gave my power away to somebody else. Narcissa just wanted power, and Silas just represented a lot of that power dynamic she didn't have from events prior to the start of the story.
It gets me thinking, hearing you say, like, she's after power. It's not inherently evil to want power. I mean, we talk about, I think as writers all the time, like, female empowerment is a good thing, and we want to see that in our stories. But she takes it a step further by, instead of finding another way to harness the power she's craving, she retaliates when it doesn't go the way that she was expecting it to go, which I think is what makes her a villain. What do you think about that?
Most definitely. And in several of the letters, you can see that after the arrangement between her and Silas got null and void, her quest for power continues on as she's, like, politically plotting his downfall. Even going so far to potentially murdering him. And obviously that backfired because he was already contemplating ending his life at that point, and it got backfired again. And they're now trapped in this purgatory of a space and time. So, in some aspects, she also feels like he's responsible for all of the failed attempts of trying to take back or not even take back what she wants, but just try and take what she wants out of this one person that represented a lot of things for her in terms of grasping onto a world where she doesn't have to, like, basically take commands from anybody.
So then talk to me about William a little bit. How is it different for him?
So, very much, when I was creating him, he was very much the idealistic man that I, like, have seen. He's basically like a Gaston, except on steroids, where he is the man. He has the power. But when, like, this other guy comes in and takes his quote-unquote prize for him away, even though he knows is damaged goods, he doesn't like the fact that someone had another say in what he deemed is his. A lot of his character development was based on a lot of the men who were potentially, like, domestic violence perpetrators. Kind of the archetypes that you would see in terms of, I'm going to play really nice in your face to get you to like me, maybe get other people to like me, and then switch on a dime sort of thing. But his is more or less, he wants to continue to exert his power over either people or situations. So even though he might have been in the wrong, or even though he might not have liked Valeria so much, he hates the fact that someone took what he deemed was his away. His is more or less like, he knows that he has the power and he's not struggling to get it back or whatever. He just doesn't like that somebody else took things that he had already, like, either thrown away or just didn't want. He just wanted to remain in control.
He's deeply entitled in that way. Was there anything else about the book you wanted to address or discuss before we move on to maybe talking more of the business side of writing?
I will say my little favorite parts of writing it was, like, the little the shadows. Those were my fun little tidbits and quirks. I did like the evanescence of those shadows locked behind doors that seem to know things more than most people.
I really liked the shadows too. I liked the entire castle environment you created, where it's almost sort of had these haunted house themes, but then some of the ghosts were, like Ebony, were more helpful. Some of them were a bit more nefarious. It almost kept you on your toes as a reader. Like, you didn't quite know the motivations of any of these creatures living in the castle. So yeah, it was very fun to read. You already mentioned that marketing was difficult for you. Is that primarily done through social media? If so, how does that look?
Yeah, so a lot of the marketing I've been doing has actually been through, like, Instagram. I did try TikTok for a hot minute, and then I haven't figured it out since then. But it's a lot of, like, understanding the shift of algorithms and stuff. And I was not a social media girly. Like, my Insta profile and even just in general was, hey, here's a picture of the fun thing I did, cool, hi. And mostly it would go out to, like, my friends or my family that like follow me since I've moved around the country and everything. So starting to do social media in terms of marketing is a new ball game. I still don't know what I'm doing, and if I'm doing it wrong, cool, great, amazing. We don't know, but I am lucky that there is a community out there that basically helps. I'm in a couple groups where basically we hype each other up. We hype each other up to help boost the algorithms and stuff. But marketing is definitely difficult in terms of the social sphere that we find ourselves on.
I don't have any words of wisdom, but I could definitely say you're not alone in feeling that way. Basically, every single author I've interviewed so far has said that social media is just a real doozy.
Yeah, if there was a better way to market oneself not using social media, that would be great. But that's not how we live anymore.
If you could go back to give yourself one piece of advice before you self-published or, before you started this kind of more professional writing journey, what would that piece of advice be?
Don't freak out about the small stuff. I think it was like a couple weeks up until release or whatever, I was freaking out about like a spelling error or something like that in my book. And I had been over this book like thousands of times at that point. And I think it came to a point where I was just like, nope, it's done. It's done. It's done. I have proofs. Things went out. And then seeing the statistics of how many like editing errors that potentially could happen in any book taught me that even the small, stupid little things like a small error in a book, it's not that big of a deal. Just readjust and keep going.
Okay, so this is the last question I'm going to ask. It's my favorite question. I like to ask all my authors. And it is, what are some of the books or works of art that inspire you as a writer? Who do you love to read? Your favorite authors, favorite books? Lay it on me.
I'm sitting here because I have a giant coffin-shaped shelf to my left, and I'm like, okay, what books are on there? I will say in recent years, I've been consuming a lot more gothic and horror-esque stuff, so C.G. Drews has become a huge, inspiration to me. Kelly Andrews, her book, Your Blood, My Bones, amazing. I'm trying to think of all the other books. I've been reading a lot of Dame recently, which is very different than when I write, because it's a gay Chinese specific genre. And it's so good, but also there's not only romance element, there's a lot more action elements into it, tragic elements that will rip your soul out and then stomp on it and set fire to it. Sort of books. A lot of gothic horror media too. I've already kind of mentioned a lot of my favorite movies so far. Crimson Peak, Dracula. Top book for me was Graveyard by Kelly Drews. Top movie for me was The Invitation. And top game was Scarlet Hollow. So it's like a kind of a horror-esque game. It's by the same people that did Slay the Princess. It's a visual novel type game where each choice has a branching choice effective. So your entire gameplay could be completely different from everybody else depending on what traits you choose, what your choices you make, and what branch of those choices go out to. So it's a really fun game. The story is amazing. Essentially, you're in town for your great aunt or your aunt's funeral, and strange things starts happening in this little small town, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And you meet a bevy of different people in this little small town who are also trying to figure out what's going on. And you could also romance a couple folks too.
That sounds super fun. I'm going to definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's on Steam.
Okay, good to know. Holly Ann, thank you so much for being on Authors on Audio. I really enjoyed our conversation. Everybody go pick up a copy of In the Midnight Garden. It is romantic, it is gothic, it's got paranormal aspects in it. Highly recommend. So Holly, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.